Hi, my name is Jay Still with Pioneer Natural Resources. I'm sure all of you are aware of the soaring costs in your utility bills you've seen over the last year. The reason for this is our country is going through a shortage of natural gas and oil. Developments like we had here in Raton Basin go a long way to solve our energy shortage in the United States. I believe that open and honest communication are the best ways to answer questions and solve concerns that people may have about our operations. Our operations have a big impact in the Raton Basin, positive and negative. What I'd like to do is discuss with you our process, what goes on in coal bed natural gas development, to answer some of your questions. I think that communications is so important that we need to get this message out to more people than what we can do just with one-on-one conversations. So we're putting this on a medium that can be sent out to all people in the area so that you can see what goes on in our processes. Of course, if you want to talk with us personally, we're always available. Our contact information is on the DVD. You'll also see contact information at the conclusion of the video. So I hope you find this video informative, and with that said, let's get started, and I'll see you at the end. Thanks.
Coal is a solid fossil fuel formed from ancient plants, including trees, ferns, mosses, and algae that grew in swamps and bogs or along coastal shorelines. Generations of these plants died and were gradually buried under layers of sediment. Over long periods of time, the makeup of the Earth's surface changed, and seas and large rivers caused deposits of sand, clay, and other mineral matter to accumulate, burying the peat. Sandstone and other sedimentary rocks were formed, and pressure caused by their weight squeezed water from the peat. Increasingly deeper burial and heat associated with it gradually caused the organic material to undergo a number of transitional states to form coal. In effect, the mounting pressure and temperature caused the original organic material, which was rich in carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen, to become increasingly carbon-rich and hydrogen and oxygen-poor. Further, peat exposed to heat and pressure from additional burial beneath other sediments becomes compressed and chemically changed into low-grade coals, such as lignite, and under further heat and pressure is converted to higher-grade coals. Geologists estimate that from 3 to 7 feet of compacted plant matter was required to form 1 foot of bituminous coal. The coals formed in the Raton Basin during the late Cretaceous and early Tertiary ages, or approximately 60 million years ago. During the formation of coal, commonly termed the coalification process, large amounts of methane gas is generated, more gas than the coals can hold. Some of the gas escapes into other rocks or into the atmosphere, but some of it remains in the microscopic size cracks commonly called the cleat system within the coal. Generally, the gas content of the coal increases with the maximum depth to which it is buried, and also by the rank or grade of the coal. Coal is a common source of water or aquifer because the cleats or microfractures are generally saturated with water. Methane gas is locked or absorbed in the coal by the water in cleats and is usually undetected by conventional gas well technology. To release the gas from the coal seams, by pressure reduction, water must be extracted, usually by pumping. The released gas is called coal bed methane gas. Coal bed methane gas is produced by mining in many states as it is in the Raton Basin. The presence of this gas is well known from its occurrence in underground coal mines, where it can present a serious safety risk. The Raton Basin lies within the southeastern part of Colorado and northeastern part of New Mexico. This basin is considered one in a series of intermontane basins primarily developing around 60 million years ago during the late Cretaceous and early Tertiary ages. At depths of around 1,200 to 3,500 feet below surface, the principal production targets of the basin are the Vermejo Formation and the Raton Formation coals. As you can see in the outcrop where the coals have been pushed up and exposed in the road cuts, the coals are interbedded within various shales and sandstones. In order to drill a coal bed methane natural gas well, there are several things that need to be addressed. After location for a well has been determined by the geologist, the Land Department begins the first of several processes needed to clear a well to be drilled. A petroleum land person will review the chain of title as it is recorded at the local county courthouse to ensure that an oil and gas lease exists between the owner of the minerals and the company and that it covers the proposed well site. In most cases, an abstract of title for the affected minerals will be built by the Land Department and submitted to a title attorney for review. The attorney will review the legal documents and determine if there are any problems in the chain of title that would prohibit the well from being drilled. It is also at this time that it may become apparent to the land person that the surface estate has been severed, meaning that the mineral owner is not the same as the surface owner. This happens when the land is sold and the seller retains ownership in the minerals or can result from non-payment of taxes on the mineral estate. By law, Pioneer is responsible for identifying the surface owners only to the extent that any transfer of ownership is recorded in the public records in the local county courthouse. This severance in ownership of the surface and minerals is a tremendously important issue in how a company conducts operations. Colorado was patterned after Texas and Oklahoma, which were both set up as dominant mineral states. In these states, the surface owner must allow the mineral owner access to their ownership. Colorado has taken more steps to protect the surface owners in the last 10 years and operates under the rules of accommodation. This means that the surface estate owner must accommodate the need for the mineral owner to access what they own, but the mineral owner can only use the portion of the surface that is reasonable and necessary when conducting operations. Under the current rules and regulations of the Colorado Oil and Gas Conservation Commission, commonly known as the COGCC, which is the governmental body that oversees petroleum operations in Colorado, payment to the surface owner is not required. Even so, Pioneer pays surface damages to the landowner if a surface use agreement can be negotiated. A surface use agreement is important for both parties as it clearly defines the rights of the landowner and the operator. Further, under the COGCC rules, the company is required to notify the surface owner of its intentions to access the landowner's surface to locate the spot for the well. This official notice, delivered via certified mail, will be sent to the address shown in the county courthouse records, usually in the assessor's office. In this notice, the landowner is offered the opportunity to meet for an on-site consultation on the property as required by the COGCC rules. The surface owner may waive this consultation if they are comfortable with the location of the well site and the access route to be used. This is further explained in a pamphlet that is required to be provided to the surface owner, which is included in the certified mail. If the surface owner wants to meet on the property, a member of the Land Department known as the Field Coordinator will meet the landowner or their designated representative at the property at the agreed time. The Field Coordinator will set markers into the ground outlining the well pad layout and set a stake with the well name on it to identify the location of the wellhead within the boundaries of the well pad. The Field Coordinator will also flag the route showing where the road and the pipeline will be located. The company will try to work with the landowner as far as their preferences for visual mitigation. Some landowners prefer to avoid losing trees, so we will place the well in an open area. And some landowners may prefer to avoid losing pasture, so we will attempt to place the wells in wooded areas. This type of freedom to move a well may not always be possible. It is important to note that there are basically three main contributing factors for determining a well location, and they are in descending order of importance. 1. Geologic and/or reservoir considerations, or the distance from existing wells that will best maximize production of a well. 2. Topographic restrictions such as steep cliffs, dikes, rivers, or ponds. The company must avoid these areas. The third and final consideration for locating wells is the landowner's preference. While it may be true that some landowners' preference is not to have a well at all, this is not a viable option. This is the time when the landowner and the field coordinator need to do their best to find a viable location with the least impact to both parties.
Hi, my name's Bill Chase. I'm drilling superintendent for Pioneer Natural Resources in the Western Division. This is one of my operations in the Raton Basin. We're drilling a well here to about 1,245 feet estimated depth. Right now we've just spudded surface hole, and we should be drilling to roughly about 640 feet, where we will set a string of surface pipe. Once the hole's drilled, we will put that in the hole to that total depth, which is typically 50 to 100 feet below the nearest water well within a 1 mile radius. At that point, we'll cement the surface pipe into the well. It actually protects our water resources, our aquifers. It keeps any drill cuttings, drill solids, any of our product, our natural gas, from going back into the water zones. Once we get this 8 5/8 casing set and cemented into the ground, we will go inside that with a 7 7/8 bit. We will drill that to a total depth of our production hole, typically in this area down to the coal bed seams that hold the methane gas. Once we reach that depth, we'll come out, we'll log the well with some electronic logs to make sure that we've got the required zones that we're looking for, the hole size, different conditions in the hole. We'll come out of the hole with those logs, get it logged, and then we'll run a string of 5.5 casing to bottom, and we'll cement that in the ground. That is actually our production hole. And from that point on, it goes to completion, and we'll run our tubing in the hole, which will actually carry our water and our product out of the hole. As we drill a joint of drill pipe down, when we get it drilled down and to the bottom, we'll pick it back up. They will pick up a joint of drill pipe, screw it into the string, and we're good to drill another 30-foot section. Right now they're going to make a connection. You can tell by the air that's being vented, all that is air, compressed air that we use to clean the hole with. They're venting that air off, get the pressure off of the drill pipe. Once it's vented off, they'll make that connection and go back to drilling. As you can tell, it's a loud, noisy operation. We do everything that we can to keep that to a minimum, but it is big, heavy equipment. Pioneer's made offers to actually put the landowners and the local folks that live close to this area, even though they may not be an actual lease or landowner, to notify those folks, to tell them that we are coming in. And in some instances, Pioneer has made offers to actually house these folks in some of the local motels here in Trinidad while we do this operation. What you actually see is a drilling operation using air with just enough water injected into it, not so much for the cleaning. The air actually cleans the hole. What the water and the soap does is to keep the dust levels down as well as help with the cleaning. There's nothing that is going to harm the environment. It's all biodegradable, and it not only protects our aquifers, but it also protects the surface in case there's some runoff or anything along that nature, there's nothing there to hurt anything. All of our water that we use for this operation is stored in a 500-barrel water tank. This water is actually produced water that we produced out of another well that we've already drilled. It's not fresh water. It's water that we are actually recycling. We're actually using this water back into the next location that we do. This is a fairly large operation. We have lots of equipment here. That equipment uses diesel and oil. We go out of our way to see that we don't have any incidences with contamination on location with these products that we use to operate this equipment with. We make sure all the trash is picked up, there's nothing left behind, and we actually start our reclamation almost immediately when the rig goes out. Behind the dumpster is a series of porta potties. Those are all chemically sound, so that we're actually leaving the location the same way that we found it when we rigged the rig up.
Here's our casing, here's our coal. The perforating means taking usually how it's done is there's an electric cable, and on the end of it is basically a piece of pipe with some charges inside of it called perforating charges. They're lowered down across the zone, the coal, in this case, that we're wanting to perforate, and they make holes in the pipe. And remember, on the outside here, we have our cement. They penetrate through the cement, and they allow the coal here and the inside of the pipe to be in contact with each other. So the gas, water can flow in to the casing and then be pumped out of the well. So that's perforating. The third step of the things that we're talking about is called fracturing or fracture treating, hydraulic fracturing. And it is, we look at our same well bore, we have our perforations, and we have our coal. We pump fluids, and the majority of the hydraulic fracturing that we do in the Raton Basin uses a foam, nitrogen, water, a little bit of surfactant mix. We pump it down the inside of these tubulars and through the perforations at a rate high enough that it actually cracks the coal. And if you take a bird's eye view, and here's our little well bore, and here's our formation, our coal under the earth, several thousand feet, it makes a little crack that goes from the well bore out. And the assumption is that it's two opposing wings. That's ideal. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. In this crack that we generate using the foam, we fill it with sand. We call it proppant, as into prop the fracture open, proppant, prop. And we fill this with sand. So when we're done, and the earth wants to close on this little crack that we just created, part of it is held open, a quarter of an inch or so, maybe less, with the sand that we put inside the crack. That way, the water, the gas that's in this coal formation can flow into the crack, down the crack, and then out the wellbore. So ideally, it would come from the side, your gas and water, into this crack, flow down the crack, into the wellbore, be pumped out. Hi, I'm Mike Much, the Operations Engineering Manager for Pioneer Natural Resources, and I look after the Western Division. This is a schematic of everything that we've talked about previously, all together in one cartoon, so you can kind of see how the fracturing operation works on the surface as well as downhole. This is a representation, or this is a picture of our coil tubing unit. The unit has a reel of tubing that's lowered into the well across from the coal interval that we're wanting to hydraulically fracture stimulate. Here, this being our coal, a slurry of foam and sand is injected into the coal where it actually cracks the coal, fills it full with proppant. We pull up to the next coal interval that's already perforated, inject the sand and foam again, causing a crack, filling that crack with sand. This holds the fracture open, allowing the gas and water to flow into the fracture, to the wellbore, and back to the surface. This is a schematic or a picture of a pump, and this is what is used to lift the water and allow the gas to flow out of the well. So this morning, this was an empty location, and we've moved this equipment out here, rigged in, set it up in just the last 2 hours. And when the day's over, it'll all be rigged down and moved out. So I thought we'd take a minute and just kind of go through what we're looking at here. On the left, in these green, large flat tanks, they're filled with water. The bulk of the jobs that we do here, we use the produced coal water from other coal wells. The blender is a piece of equipment that mixes in proportions the proppant, how we talked about the sand that we pump in this crack. Moving to the right, we have the coil tubing unit. This is a reel of steel coil or tubing that is on a spool. You can see it goes up over the top of this mast, this derrick, and down into the wellbore, which is right in the very center bottom here. That's the actual wellhead leading to the casing going down into the ground. This is a nitrogen unit. Nitrogen makes up about 80% of our atmosphere. It's an inert gas, it's non-poisonous, extremely environmentally friendly. This makes up the bulk of the fracturing fluid that we pump in the ground. So finally, what's right in front of us is a pit that we have dug in the earth. We've lined it with plastic. The other products that are in this water are guar, made from the bean of the guar plant. A little bit of surfactant, that's what gives it that little skiff of foam on the very top, and what we call a breaker, or an enzyme chemical similar to the enzymes that are in your stomach that break down and process food. This guar flour that we use to viscosify the water, the enzyme breaker degrades that down into no viscosity back to water. So it's all very green.
The water from the coals must be pumped off using subsurface pumps. These pumps are driven by either gas-powered or electric-driven engines. Gas-powered engines are used when there is no electricity available or when greater horsepower is needed to lift high volumes of water. Electric motors are preferred and used wherever possible in that they are quieter and are lower cost to operate. Pioneer is constantly investigating ways to mitigate or minimize sound impact. Some of the ways of sound mitigation are use of advanced mufflers on gas engines, install sound-absorbing panels around equipment, run equipment as slow as possible, and use as little horsepower as possible. Smaller horsepower and slower speed result in quieter operation. Pioneer takes pride in minimizing visual impact. Well pads are installed in a fashion that makes it relatively unnoticeable from major thoroughfares. Any equipment that is visible is clean, well maintained, and painted colors that are kind to the surroundings. Once a well is completed and put on production, traffic and noise will decrease to just a few minutes a day, or enough time for a lease operator to check the well and equipment daily. The pump, compressors, and engines that drive them are mechanical in nature and will require servicing and repair from time to time. You will see our lease operators on a daily basis. Pioneer is fortunate to have developed a very conscientious group of lease operators that take total ownership of their areas of responsibility. We hope you have the opportunity to meet and develop a relationship with them, and over time know that when you have a request or concern, they will make sure it is addressed. It is their daily responsibility to check each well for production, safety, and environmental concerns. Reclamation occurs in phases. The company is responsible for reseeding areas of disturbance on an ongoing basis. When our pipeline is buried, usually a 45-foot area is disturbed, but once the pipeline has been installed, the road is usually pulled back to about 16 feet. This means that the remainder of the disturbance will be reseeded. Final reclamation may be years down the road after a well is depleted. The COGCC has specific requirements that the industry has to follow and can be reviewed at any time on their website. Coal bed natural gas fields produce at low rates and for a long time. This gas field will be producing for the next 30 years. As wells become non-commercial, they will be plugged and the area will be reclaimed to as close to its original state as possible.
I'm Gerald Jacob. I'm the Environmental and Regulatory Manager for Pioneer's Western Division here in Denver. And I'll talk with you a little bit about the water production and disposal program here at Pioneer. In the Raton Basin, water management, of course, is a key part of our environmental program. It's an environmental program that ranges from air quality through different waste disposal issues. And key to the water management program is our water monitoring and testing program. And that's sort of where our water management program begins. We have a third-party company that we hire to do all of our water testing and monitoring. So we're assured of getting objective, good quality data from that program. Points to essentially one of three options for disposing of the produced water. The first option is discharge to surface water, and by that I mean actually placing the produced water in a pond, a wetland, an arroyo, a stream. But in order to do that, we have to meet all of the state water quality requirements. And we have a lot of landowners that want us to place the water in streams or in ponds on their property. A second option that we have is putting the water in a pit or a pond that is permitted with the Oil and Gas Commission. And in order to do that, we go through a whole permitting process with the State Oil and Gas Commission. A third option that we have is to dispose of the water in an injection well, and that's typically a deep well, 4,000 plus feet deep. It puts the water in a formation where it's not accessible or available for use. So those are the typical three options. There's some other ways that we dispose of the water, including dust control. That uses up a small amount of the water. But of course produces a nice benefit for landowners and the residents in that it controls the dust that would otherwise be created by truck traffic on roads in the area. Finally, we may use a small amount of our water in some of our own operations for drilling or for fracking. As part of our water management program, we will test landowner water wells as well as consult with landowners regarding how we might dispose of the water on their property. And we also make available to landowners water well test kits, so they can come in, take one of those test kits, go home, take a sample, drop it by our office, and then we'll pay for the analysis, shipping, and provide that data to the landowner. So a landowner can be monitoring the water quality of their own water well in addition to samples that the hydrologic technician might take. We will also test every coal bed methane well that we drill. That's standard procedure. We run a pretty comprehensive set of tests on a well after it's drilled, so we have a good idea of the kind of water quality that we're dealing with. and so that we can provide that information upon request to a landowner, show them what we can do and what we can't do with the water in conformance with the state regulations. The field in the Raton Basin, or I should say the gas wells in the Raton Basin, may last anywhere from 20 to 30 or more years. In terms of water production, typically what we see is after some years of water production in the wells starts to decline. And that does affect sort of what we can do and not do with the water. For example, it's possible that after 5 or 6 years the well may be producing substantially less water, in which case it may not make sense to surface discharge that water. There's very little at that point, and it may be better to just put that water into a small pond, for example. So from a landowner's point of view, it's important to recognize that the water may be temporary. It won't be there all of the time, but it could make a contribution, particularly during periods of drought, and may supplement the natural rainfall in the area. We will continue to do water sampling, particularly of the surface water, throughout the history of the field. And similarly, if we're surface discharging water, the state regulations require that we monitor that water on a weekly, monthly, and quarterly basis. And all of that gets reported to the state health department. The Raton Basin, unlike a lot of other coal bed methane basins, is unique in that it offers an opportunity for the produced water to be used in a beneficial way. The water quality is good enough, for example, that the water can be placed in streams, wetlands, ponds, where it's made available to wildlife. We have a lot of ranchers who run wildlife and hunting operations on their ranch. That's an important source of income for them. So if we can enhance their water supply on their ranch with the coal bed methane water, that's definitely a benefit for that rancher.
The volume of gas produced from the subterranean coal formation to the surface is measured electronically at the wellhead before being sent down a pipeline. A low-pressure gas gathering pipeline infrastructure collects the gas from all the wells and sends it to compressor stations, where the pressure is increased from 10 psi to 1,000 psi. This high-pressure gas is delivered to sales points to a gas buyer on a commercial pipeline. This is where we, the producer, sell our gas to a third-party buyer. The price that gas is sold is determined by greater market forces. Coal bed methane natural gas is a much-needed commodity, which is used for beneficial purposes, such as electricity, home heating, and industrial fuel.
Well, we're back. I hope you enjoyed this video and hope you found it educational. You know, the gas industry in Los Alamos County is extremely important. We provide over 70% of the county's budget. Pioneer Natural Resources is the largest employer in the county. However, we know that just financial contributions does not necessarily make a quality life. That's why at Pioneer Natural Resources, we strive to work in a safe manner, be environmentally conscious, and take into account the interest of all stakeholders, be it the surface owner, the mineral owner, the local community, or the environment. That's why in this year alone, we've given over $500,000 in charitable contributions to support the arts, the local schools, provide energy assistance to the elderly. We've also teamed with Trinidad State Junior College and developed programs where we can provide degrees where people can get quality jobs in our industry after they graduate. The environment is also very important. We've engaged in a 5-year elk study to understand the habitat in this local area and understand how we can improve our operations to the betterment of the elk population instead of its detriment. We continually strive to improve our operations, and if you have any other questions, please give us a call. We'd love to discuss coal bed natural gas development with you personally. Thank you for your time.